But, it's not necessarily the end of the world if you do lose it, because you still have another game with Cincinnati in Cleveland later in the season. They do happen to pull off the upset, then it's time to start getting really excited and never mention the words style points again, because, as I said, the NFL is all about winning football games. And if you win this game 20-17 on a interception return late in the game, and you only get 200 yards of offense, who cares?
That's it.
This is all about just finding a way to win, and it's a very difficult place to win. Let's be honest.
Nobody gives those ugly Super Bowl victories back. That's all I'm saying. John McMullen from the Sports Network, thank you very much. Another great Monday. John's here every Monday, and of course you guys can find him on the Sports Network on Twitter at JF McMullen. John, have a great week. Enjoy the Browns on Thursday night week.
All right, and enjoy the game. Enjoy the short week.
You got it. It'll be a little different, but I'm ready for it, man. 2 games in 5 days. I can do it, man. John, have a great one, man. We'll catch up next week. John McMullen from the Sports Network, my man. Every Monday he's here, guys. Let's take a break, come back, get Dan Wismar on the phone. He was in the house yesterday down at the First Energy Stadium. I'm curious to see what his thoughts were on the reaction of his fellow fans. I'm just curious to know what the percentage was in the house. How many people were really a hostile home crowd, and how much of that is a television production blown up for social media purposes. Let's talk about that with Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan, and let's talk Buckeyes as they trample the Fighting Illini, and now we're not looking ahead. We're at Michigan State. Of course, we'll do a full preview later in the week, but we're going to set the stage for that. Talk Buckeyes, Browns, and more. Don't go anywhere. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan joins us next here on The Fix.
We here at the Sports Fix are very in-depth when we interview the sports stars.
Oh, I saw the whole thing, dude. First you were all like, whoa, and then we were like, whoa, and then you were like, whoa. What are you talking about? You got serious thrill issues, dude. Oh, awesome. Oh.
Maybe not, but you should still listen.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going
mine, the most magnificent belt ever created.
America's Fantasy Sports Superstore, fantasyjocks.com. The Sports Fix is now available every day on the world's largest internet radio service, iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeartRadio app, subscribe to the show, and get your fix.
I'm Pro Football Hall of Famer Paul Warfield. There's just one place where students are students first and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. That place is your local high school. High school sports help young people become confident leaders and role models and use the skills developed today to do even bigger things in life tomorrow. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education.
This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
In baseball, miracles can happen when a team works together.
2 out, bottom of the ninth, down to their last strike.
The same is true in the fight against cancer. That's why MLB has teamed up with Stand Up to Cancer. Because we believe that when we all stand up together,
41,000 on their feet.
we can make cancer history.
Now everybody's standing. What a buzz in this building.
This is beyond a dream. Stand up with MLB at standuptocancer.org.
Hey, Cleveland, this is Ed Doherty, voice of San Ignatius Wildcat football, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, live on the Sports Fix Radio Network. Wow, we're getting ready to creep into Hour 3 here. As always, an extended Monday edition of the show. We got a lot of things to talk about. We've been talking Browns and NFL, little Cavs earlier. Going to keep that rolling a little bit. Got a lot to get into with my man Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan, who's joining me next. We'll talk about his thoughts at the Browns game. We'll talk Buckeyes, OHIO, baby. Buckeyes do what they got to do. Nothing unexpected. And now it sets up the big one. We'll talk about that here and more. Let's do it. You can't call, but you can do it on Facebook and Twitter with us. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE, baby. Email me, TheSportsFix@AOL.com, because on the phones, Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan. As soon as I turn him up here, he can say hi. Dan, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, J-Rock. Good to be with you. It's one of those magic Mondays where all the good guys won over the weekend, so plenty to talk about.
All the good guys won over the weekend. Exactly. Cavs started it on Friday night, and again, by the way, I'll just chuckle at the difference a day can make. But Cavs started it on Friday night, then the Buckeyes on Saturday, which we'll talk about. Browns on Sunday, so decent weekend there. They're not always that decent, as we know. Dan, you were there yesterday. Talk to me a bit about the Browns game. My first question for you is, obviously on television, and I think maybe some people misunderstood what I meant before the break when I teased it. When I said when I want to know percentages or how much of that purposes of television, what I mean is on TV you can't tell what direction the sound's coming from. You can't tell if it's half the building, a quarter of the building. So I'm just curious, those few instances where we heard some home fans booing the Browns offensively there in certain parts of the game, what percentage of the stadium was that? Is that a loud minority, or was truly a whole stadium of Browns fans so used to winning already that they were booing the Browns yesterday?
Oh, I think it was a fairly small minority of people that, and I don't even think it was that loud. I mean,
thank you.
The guy in front of me at one point turned around. You know, here's the situation. The Bucks had just come down and scored to go ahead 17-16. There are the Browns backed up against their goal line, and they did have the one time where they had to punt out of there badly, and then they got back down again the next time they had the ball. At this point, the guy in front of me, who's been sitting with me for 15 years, turns around to me and he says, "So how long do you think it's going to be before we start hearing the Johnny chant now?" Because there's that certain element in there that is just, you know, the planets will not be aligned correctly until Johnny Manziel's the starting quarterback. So there's no dealing with them, and they're there, and they pay their money too, so they're allowed to say whatever they want. But it was very muted. The booing, I mean, anytime the offense looks horrible, you'll have a certain amount of booing going on when you have a 3-and-out deep in your own end, especially if you're already behind. But it was a small minority of people. It was not a big deal, any more so than the sort of maybe overly indulged portion of the fan base that is all a constant embarrassment to the rest of us down there. So that's just par for the course. When you've been there over the long haul, you're going to have that element in the stands. But I love the crowd in general. I'll tell you, though,
Thank you.
First of all, let me make a couple points about the Browns game that I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
One is to tell you how right you were last week when we talked about the way that the Tampa Bay Bucks might end up beating the Cleveland Browns with size at the wide receiver positions. I mean, you certainly were right about that, as Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson just abused the Browns' corners. And, you know, Glennon had a really pretty nice day, I thought, getting the ball to those guys in the right kinds of spots. But, yeah, that's all I could think about all day long is Mike Evans is pulling down passes. Not only should we have taken him at 8 instead of Justin Gilbert, but You know, what a good-looking young player he is, and how right you were the other day when you were saying that that's what scared you more than anything else about this Tampa Bay team. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, was the biggest play of the game, in my opinion, was 3rd and 16 from the 5-yard line down on the dog pound end. I mean, we'd already given up the ball one time, couldn't get it out of there. It looks bad on a couple plays. He throws a little pass to Tate, and he gets dropped at the 4-yard, and he ends up picking it up.
Yeah.
And they ended up getting the ball out to midfield. And to me, that was the turning point of the game, because you're already down a point. You're punting out of your end zone again if he doesn't make that play to Miles Austin, and who made some move after he caught the ball to pick up the first down. Really, they went from there. But to me, that was kind of a little talked about turning point of that football game, where Hoyer, made a great throw, fired it in. Austin made a nice catch, picked up the first down, and really the game turned from that point, I thought.
No, you're right. The play right before that, like you said, trying not to take a safety or a sack or anything. You get that quick pass out to Tate, who just gets gobbled up, and there's nothing happening there, and it was looking bad. You're right. No, that changed the drive there, changed the working on the field position. I'm with you there for sure. And then obviously we saw in the second half, and this was something that we talked about in the earlier part of the season, that we saw going back to with Hoyer at quarterback, was learning from the mistakes in the first half and coming out and re-attacking the defense in the second half. I noticed that, and I said earlier, he talked about it a bit in his post-game, a couple of plays that they ran earlier and missed reads or whatever it was, came back to it again later in the second half and were able to find the guys that won, the big one being the one to Gabriel there, of course, but I thought that was something. But, I mean, doing the 11 in a row, you could see a difference. I'm sure being there, you could see it as well, whether you're watching on TV or not, in him in the second half, being more accurate, hitting guys, keeping those drives moving better, regardless. I think you're right. And you were right, too, to point out that maybe I came away from this game myself thinking Terrence West is our number one running back right now. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's my sense of it. That after watching all three of these guys, and the where is Crowell, question, set that aside for a minute. Maybe he fumbles in practice like he fumbled 3 times in one game. But if that's what's keeping him off the field, and that's what it is, and I'm okay with it. He shows promise, and I'm sure we'll see more of him. Maybe he does the same thing with Crowell that he did with West to light a fire under him. Because now every time West carries the ball after he was dished for one game, he's playing like it's his last play, which is great. But I came away from this game thinking that Terrence West is the number one running back on this football team. Obviously, opinions can differ on that, but that was my take. You're right also about how he was, doing an excellent job of picking up blitzes. That stuff doesn't go unnoticed, and he's going to get some. If they had Buckeye leads for the helmets, he'd get a couple for just picking up blitzes yesterday. But the other thing I'm thinking about, Jerry, is I remember you and I talking when this team was 1-2, and even though we were 1-2, we were feeling pretty good about it because everybody knew that we should have beaten the Ravens. There were 10 different ways that any one of those 10 plays had gone our way, we beat the Ravens. So there was optimism, and they'd scored 27, 28 points, but sitting at 1-2, and we looked at the schedule, and we said the next 5 games are the Steelers and 4 bad teams. I had to figure that we could do well in those games. We felt good about our chances to do well in those games. And I'm going to take the 4 bad teams, the Tennessee, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, and Oakland, and saying, if you can't do better than split with those 4 bad teams, then you're one of them. As it turns out, they won 4 out of those 5 games, beat 3 of those 4 bad teams, and you're sitting here at 5-3, and once again you're feeling pretty good about yourself. But the thing that struck me was, looking back on it, is why were we so optimistic when we're sitting there at 1-2? Right. Yeah.
way back then, but we saw something, and that same something that we saw has been borne out, that this team isn't one of the horrible teams in the NFL anymore. They're somewhere in the middle of the pack with a bunch of other guys.
Absolutely.
You don't want to make more of it than it is, but you did beat three out of the four bad teams. One of them got you on the road. But you hammered the Steelers, a team that has looked pretty darn good the last couple of weeks. But maybe that 31